Saturday Night Live, Life Recovery Meeting. This is a place that we welcome everyone, and it's life is a messy place, and we deal with not all the messes, but a lot of messes. And so come on in if you're out there in video land, and we just want to help you, and hopefully you can learn something. Tonight we're going to be talking about step 9. This is the 9th month. Each month we do that same month number. So we do step 9. This is the 9th month, so we do it every week. And in our workbook and our Bible, 12-step Bible, Life Recovery Bible, it covers, it has 5 or 6 different teachings, lessons, whatever you want to call them, and we pick them out and go over those. So we'll be doing that, and we're going to be doing, Paul is going to be doing the servant's heart tonight out of 1 Peter 2:18 through 25. Zach's going to be doing the MC, John's going to be doing the 12 steps, Alicia's going to be doing the reflection, and of course I'll be doing Doug time, and I am going to be covering the where am I at? There we are. How to apologize to someone you've hurt and actually move forward. So that's 5 steps and how to do that. We'll be talking about that. In fact, I think I'll just go ahead and touch on those 5 steps, just so that you be interested, hopefully be interested in the 5 steps. And that is, first one is take responsibility. This is how you apologize for hurting someone and moving on. That's what step 9 is all about. It's about making amends and trying to deal with that. That's helping us grow and hopefully maybe relieving some of the stress or pain or suffering for somebody else. But anyway, first one is take responsibility. Second one is decide on the content and the conditions, which is, I think, will be interesting to talk about. Number 3, create intentions without expectations. I thought, my first time when I read that, I thought, that may be kind of interesting. So we'll talk about that. Number 4, make a commitment to yourself, which is very important. We make commitments to ourselves all the time, whether you realize it or not. And usually they're to your hurt and not for your good. And actually, if we use that technique for our benefit, that would be very, very healthy. So number 5 is check in regularly. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm going to be talking about. And we're going to be talking about step 9 and the servant's heart. Also, a quote by John Acuff, and I thought this was interesting. He says, if you can worry, you can wonder. If you can doubt, you can dominate. If you can spin, you can soar. Okay, so right now we're going to turn it over to Mr. MC, and so we're glad you're here with us. We're glad that you're here with us tonight, and so I am killing time while I'm waiting on Zach. So anyway, we're glad you're all here, and I'm done killing time.
Hello. Well, we're going to get started, so please welcome John. He's going to read the 12 steps for us.
Yeah. All right, John.
Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to God, to the care of God. Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Step 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, and that others also includes us. Step 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all of our affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
We are going to be working on step 9 tonight, and we're going to have Paul come give us step. Please welcome Paul.
Good evening. Step 9 says, we have made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So, I know I've told you this a couple of times that it took me a long time to get to step 4, because step 4 was when we made a list of the things that we had done. And then we got to step 8, and I think that is where we decided that we were willing to be ready to go ahead and make those amends. And then in step 9, you actually have to do the work. And when I first started going through the book, I didn't want to get to step 4, let alone step 9, because this is the hard part. But and there's a few reasons that it's the hard part, because we're mostly proud, and we don't want to admit that and we definitely don't want to have to humble ourselves in front of somebody else. In the Bible reading section, I'm going to read the step again. We made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. At this point in recovery, most of us have experienced some major changes in our attitudes. At one time, we were so consumed by our addiction that we thought only of ourselves, failing to show any consideration for others. This step focuses on the interest and needs of others. The Apostle Paul taught, do not be selfish, do not try to impress others, be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. Philippians 2, 3, and 4 says, whether we make amends, or that's Philippians 2, 3, and 4, whether we make amends directly to others or choose not to because of the injury it would cause, we should be concerned with protecting others from the pain and suffering. There may be situations in which we will suffer if we go back and make amends. This is part of the work of recovery, and the potential for pain should not deter us. The Apostle Peter wrote, if you suffer for doing good and endure it patiently, God is pleased with you. Christ suffered for you. He is your example, and you must follow his steps. He never sinned nor deceived anyone. He did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when he suffered. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. This step can be difficult as we face the painful consequences of our past actions. During this time, we need to turn our life over to God, who always judges justly. Making amends is kind of tough, just having to swallow your pride and go back to people, and addiction causes a lot of damage. You know, we have to go back and apologize maybe to spouses, exes, boyfriends, girlfriends we'd had in the past, our children. That was kind of the tough one for me to have to go back and admit that I really screwed up a lot of times as a father by just not being there because I was off doing other things that were more important to me than my kids. And for some of us, that's what addiction is other things, addiction becomes more important than the people around us. And so when we want to get beyond it, we got this big baggage of guilt that we carry around. And step 9 is not for those folks that we have offended, it's for us. We get to go to them with our baggage and our garbage and say, I did this to you. I'm sorry I did this to you. Please forgive me. And when we do that, we've taken this monster that we've been carrying around, we've taken this baggage, and we've laid it out in front of somebody. That makes us really vulnerable, and that's where it's talking about this could hurt because there are consequences for that. They can say, I don't even remember what you're talking about, which happens more often than any other answer, because most people don't carry around your guilt. They forget what you did as time goes by, but you carry it around because you can't forget. And then on the other hand, they might say, I really wish you would pay me back the $1,000 you stole out of my sock drawer. And at that point, they're like, oh, well, will you take $3 a week until I die or whatever? But you should if that's their expectation. Or they may say, you have done so much damage to me, I hate you, I will never forgive you. And that would be the pain that we have to suffer. But even at that, when you have gone and you have laid yourself out and you become humble and you've asked for forgiveness, then more than likely, at this point, you have gone to God first and already been forgiven, but you're trying to make amends with somebody on a human level. And if they don't forgive you, they get to keep the baggage. It's not yours anymore. You can lay it at their feet and walk away, and it's not yours, and you don't have to carry it anymore. And that's why step 9 is so important. It is for our freedom and for our benefit. And if it can help them if they're actually worried about it or concerned about it, and you can make amends and they'll forgive you and it puts family back together. Sometimes they have to look us over a little bit and go, well, you know, you've said this 45 times and you've never followed through before, and I don't trust you. That's another one of those things that could hurt because we're vulnerable and they say, we don't trust you. But what you do is you do the work. You get up the next day and you don't use and you make good decisions and you keep marching forward, and then you go to bed and they're still not going to trust you, and then you do that the next day and you make good decisions and you keep marching forward. And over a period of time, at some point, most folks will start to look at you and say, you know, maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the time they're actually going to get it together, and they'll soften up and you can rebuild relationships. So in our workbook, there are some questions. And I think I probably already answered a couple of them. There we go. I thought my marker fell out. Anyway, the first question is, what am I afraid will happen when I attempt to make amends? Well, I'm afraid that I'm going to have to be vulnerable. I'm afraid I'm going to have to swallow my pride. And I'm afraid that everything may not just be happy-go-lucky the first time when I walk up to somebody and they're not ready to forgive. But like I said, it's all about my heart and my attitude. And if I have the right attitude and I can humbly go and say, please forgive me, and they don't, I have done my part and I know that God forgives me and I don't have to carry the baggage away. And do I fear painful consequences that will cause me suffering if I make amends? If so, what's the worst thing that could happen? That's pretty much what I said. Somebody that I really want to build a bridge back to could actually look at me and say, I hate you, I will hate you until the day you die, and I'll never forgive you for what you've done to me. But I have a choice. You know, I could crumble. I could go give up and just say, well, this recovery thing ain't worth it. I think I'll just go back and do what I was doing because it hurt my feelings, boo-hoo. And that's not a very good decision. Unfortunately, I know that when we're talking to people with addiction, that's been the choice that gets made way too often. But that's usually because you haven't had this little bit of information out of this book, and nobody's told you that you don't have to carry the garbage because they want to keep it. They can keep it, you don't have to. Do I trust God's will for me if I follow the challenge of step 9? Well, there's two levels on that. There's a brain level that says, well, of course, because God's God and He always does what's right and He's going to take good care of me. And then there's, do I really believe it down in my heart? And that's a decision that we all get to make on our own. Are we gonna jump out there, trust God, know He's got it under control, and whatever the answers are, He's trying to lead me through this mess that I've created. He's trying to pull me out of this mess, and He's shown me a way to do it. Do I trust Him? I trust Him. But it's really easy to trust when we're reading out of the book and we're talking about it. It's a lot harder when you step out and you're out there in the thick of things and you actually have to reach out and trust God. Again, you can retreat and decide this recovery thing's just really not for me. I'm going to go back and do what I did. And at some point here, somebody said, well, how'd that work out for you last time? It didn't. So then you get to go around and go through all the suffering and problems and try to get it back together and start over again. And we all know how much fun that is.
Oh, we'll get it right before 40 years.
Yeah, I started to reference around the mountain because that's what the Israel did. So, which of the 12 steps do I need to focus on before I make these fearsome amends? The being ready to go do it, really ready to go do it, not just blowing through the steps. The book, it's funny because some people get the book and they're like, there's 12 steps, and it's a really thin book. I don't read fast, but I could easily do this in 12 weeks because it's just a little thin book. And the reality is it's a lot thicker than that because it's not the book that makes the changes, it's your heart that makes the changes. So sometimes your heart just doesn't read that and like, oh, that's how it works. I'm going to do that, and that's, like a little magic trick to get it done. It's not a magic trick. We call it a workbook for a reason because some of these things are hard. Sometimes you need to take a minute, especially when it's time to get ready to go out and look at people in the face. You may need to talk to one of your friends, your sponsor, somebody who's going to give you wise guidance and help you make good decisions, and ask them, am I ready to go do this? Because if you step out and do this too quick and you get that, I hate you, I'm never going to forgive you, it may crush you. So you may need to ask somebody am I ready for that? Or can you go with me? Or, hold my hand and help me walk through this dark spot. But you got to make sure that you're ready before you step out and do that. And that's pretty much what I got for you tonight. I love y'all, and make healthy choices.
All right.
Thanks, Paul, that was awesome.
Good deal. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
That was good. We appreciate it, Paul. Thank you. And we're going to move on to the reflection. So please welcome Alicia.
Alicia.
Okay, so making amends. There's a lot of things that Paul touched on, that realizing that you needed to, or that I needed to do these things, having a complete change of heart, and my attitude had to change a lot before I could get to this point or even realize that I've been at this point lately. Having over a year clean, I think that the step, trusting God for His will in my life, that this is what He's been doing lately with me. God had said to me that a few times one day that it was the ministry of reconciliation, and God reconciled. I was reconciled back to God. Realized that I was the problem and that I was in my pride and I had lots of it, even to admit anything was wrong, and that I was truly sorry for the things that I'd done, and not just saying it like he said 45 times, or, just keep doing the same thing and nothing really truly changing. My faith has increased the last year over year, and since I've been truly walking out these things and doing all these principles, putting them into action, and, actually really wanting to, having the will, and, my decision maker was not broken anymore. I decided that, I was really messed up, and that a lot of things had to change about me. And what I really believe, that God was who He says He is, and what He really helped me to be restored in all these different areas. And for the last year, really, I had told my family that I was sorry. And in 2019, nobody would talk to me at all except for my sister. And she didn't reach out to me, I reached out to her. And it was really embarrassing, and I was humiliated, but that's when humility started. It was when I laid every area down of my life and just admitted those things, that God started working. My mom, she started talking to me again in January after I'd had some clean time, and she reached out to me. So that was a huge milestone for me, that, I stayed away from my family a lot, but when my husband passed away a few years ago, everybody was really bumfuzzled, and, I carried such shame and burden, and just basically went like that to everybody. I didn't want to hear anything. I didn't want to know anything that they were thinking, because I can only imagine what they were thinking. And I'm glad I don't walk in that anymore. I like this bottom part of the book after the questions, that it's one thing to say you're sorry, it's another thing to prove it. And I was just talking about this today, about how God accepts you for who you are, but man, is a different story. There's so much grace with God, but you really have to prove yourself to another human being before they'd even want to let you back in their life, that you are not going to do the same things that you did once before. Because human life is valuable and precious, and for somebody to let me back into their life, or me to let somebody into my life, I have to be careful and evaluate, the situation. Probably the last 2 or 3 months, God has been bringing all these people that I didn't see for a whole year to me, and a lot of times at work. I had to face my youngest kid's dad. I didn't have to, but I had the courage to actually sit with him. And, I'll just interject that, he had beat me, and he went to prison for beating me. And, forgiving him and being able to sit down with him was huge. And after the experience, I ran into the bathroom and cried, but it was different. What just happened, making myself vulnerable, it healed me. And he had no power over me, which I kind of felt like he was trying to still, have some sort of power over me. And when I did sit down, I interjected what peace and joy that I had found, and how I was not the same. And whatever he decided to do with that or carry out of that restaurant was up to him. I was no longer bound in those circumstances, or his way of thinking, or my way of thinking had changed. And then some other people that God brought back into my life for me to be able to say I was sorry. And then there was another instance, a lady who came into the restaurant that I used to make fun of when we were little kids on the playground. And she was with a bunch of ladies from her church, and I heard them talking about it. But I couldn't say I was sorry because I didn't want to humiliate either one of us. And maybe she didn't even remember, but God is just working and doing things and giving me opportunities that I never had before. And, lots of people aren't accepting my apology, and it's just great to see God's grace work in my life. It continues to say, at least they can enter the recovery process that results in confessing wrongs to another person and asking for forgiveness. But as the courageous person of character who wants to right the wrong, restore the loss, or pay back what was taken or owed in any way possible. Making amends is powerful. It's a powerful way of setting things straight, and it leaves others better equipped to do what you have asked. Forgive you. This is the price to be paid for freedom. It's called restitution. I'll just leave with this. I think the process in this, before really amends can begin, is forgiving yourself, and then you can do that with another human being. So that's all I got.
Good, good. Thank you, Alicia.
All right, thank you, Alicia. So, we ready for some Doug time? Please welcome Doug.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to start out here and then move down to my other perch here in a moment. But one of the things that I want to comment on, the question number 2 that Paul spoke on, and talking about, do I fear the pain, consequences that you may suffer? And he was talking about someone not accepting your apology. And in fact, I'll be talking about that in one of the 5 steps or lessons that how to make an apology. But I don't remember which lesson it was. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before last. They were really specific about this, and I don't think I got to cover it. And so I'll just cover it right now. One of the topics was that when we're making amends, and of course step 8 was about getting ready to make amends, and they were talking about what actually step 9, making the amends. I thought it was real interesting, and see if you agree with him. I think it's I agree with what he was saying, and it was that he said that even if people react negatively to you, or vent, or have a vile reaction, what your offense contributed to their reaction. And so, and what we need to do, if we're really trying to make amends, they have a right to act any way they want or need to act. And that you need to be willing and somewhat prepared that if they do react negatively, that you're there to try to help alleviate their suffering, if possible, or to help in some way, if you can. Not that you may not be able to, but if they react or even retaliate, that's part of the dynamic that you set up when you did the offense. But now, I'm not saying that's healthy. I'm just saying that's part of that dynamic. And if you're really interested in making that amends, then you need to be willing to let them have their say, without excuses. Do you know what I mean? And that's hard. What?
I had someone tell me, they were talking about the amends, and I said, oh yeah, amends, huh? And I said something random, and they said, well, oh, I'm just making amends to clean up my side of the street. So my thought was like, so it's supposed to go real easy for you then, right?
And we are to clean up our side of the street, but if the other side of the street reacts because of our mess, we get the ripple effect, and then we have more to clean up.
And sometimes when we make amends, we might tend to blame others for what happened. And that's not a good,
And that's not really making amends, is it?
no, not.
So it kind of sounds like a series of excuses trying to make things better, but you're not really having a heart transformation.
Well, doesn't it say to where it doesn't harm the other party?
Harm that person or any other person or any others, and that's to do no harm. You know, don't. We're not out. We're not out fixing ourselves by harming other people. That's what we already did. We already did that. That was in the other life, and we're still doing it.
Here, I'm apologizing for what I did, now you're so mad at me, let me fix you.
Yeah.
Well, in some cases though, I mean, like, I'm gonna be blunt. I'm a blunt person.
You can be blunt, and I'll be blunt back.
That's bad, that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and just be blunt and honest, all right?
Okay.
Just say how it is.
Good.
I didn't have, I'm new to Joplin. I lost everything. I didn't have tennis shoes this morning. I thought, and I've been walking around. Well, first I was walking in flip flops and they killed my toes. And then I bought some shoes from Goodwill, and my money was gone. I had to wait for it to get some more money sent, which I did PayPal, which was the terrible thing to do if you use your phone. You can't do PayPal. So I had to get that, call them, get that. I'm trying to make this short. I called them, get this sent back. I had to get Western Union money. So today I asked somebody to buy some shoes. Well, I'm not going to buy brand new shoes because I start work here in Joplin Tuesday morning. Well, since I want to be able to save as much money as I can and just not spend, that's why I was asking about, well, what are you going to cost me? What's this going to cost me tonight? You know, these things he's going to give it to me free. Thank you for that. But here's the thing.
You're welcome.
So I get to the very back. I'm looking for some shoes. I have those shoes that I bought from Goodwill. There's weightlifter shoes. They're not walking shoes. So I had them tossed over my shoulder, tied, tossed over my shoulder. And I was trying on shoes down here at Red out of store. I'm not going to name, I don't have to mention names, out of store. So I find some I like. And there's one lady that I've been talking to the whole time. She's one of the ladies there. And I said, well, what does these look like? I was like, I know they're kind of silly, but there was some brown leather boots. And I was like, I know there's half shoes, half boots, whatever. I said, if I wanted to go walk on the trails or something like that, this would be nice, right? And she said, well, those look just fine, you know. And I said, well, I want to buy these. Well, I go up and I take those off and I put them on the counter. And I go to put the shoes that I have, the other shoes that I had on before I started trying on shoes back on. This other lady comes up with another pair of shoes and says, well, here's your shoes. Evidently, somebody stole some shoes from them and switched them out. I'm getting blamed for this. She didn't pull me to the side. She didn't say, sir. It was nothing. It was, here's your shoes. And I said, wait, what are you talking about? I got my shoes. I didn't realize she was calling me a thief yet. All right? She told me what I was doing. After she told me what I was doing, now I know where her aim is. I was pissed, to say the least. I was mad. I was angry. I was embarrassed. I cussed. I did not threaten no one. I simply said, you do not treat your customers like this. You have all these customers was around us. Made it more embarrassing for me. There's like 20 people staring at me as I'm getting told that I'm stealing from the store, that I am not stealing. I have no reason to steal from them. And the worst thing about it is I have a wallet in my hand with cash already out of my wallet to pay for the stuff. Why would you call me a thief? I couldn't. Then in my head, you could tell how angry you could tell how angry I was then by seeing me now, talking about it. I'm still upset about it. Here's why. I did cuss. I may have called her a bitch, may have, excuse my language. I may have.
You may have.
I can't remember. I may have called, well, that's what I was thinking, so I probably did. I know I didn't threaten her. I didn't threaten to put my hands on nobody. I didn't throw nothing. I didn't do none of that. The only thing that got thrown is when I put my money back in my wallet and I shut my wallet so fast my cards went out of my wallet as well all over the floor. I said, you just lost my business. I was walking out the store. She said she's calling the police. I walked out the doors. I knew I dropped stuff out of my wallet. And I was like, I don't want to get my stuff. Stuff out of my wallet. I walked back in with the shoes. Now the shoes that she says I stole are on my feet. My shoes, and they're tied. And now she's really mad because now she thinks that not only did she caught me in stealing, now she thinks that she caught me in stealing and I'm blatantly wearing them in front of her for disrespect, which is not what was happening. I was wearing my own shoes. so this guy says, hey man, you got some cards here and stuff. He gave me the cards I dropped those points and said, you got some stuff over here. I said, yeah, thank you guys. I'm sorry for my yelling, I'm sorry for my cussing. I said, man, did you call the police? And she was on the phone with him. I said, I'm gonna be outside. I go back outside. The police are taking forever. I am hot, furious. I want to get out of this place. I want to go down to Walmart, and I was afraid if I leave, then they would say, well, you left with stolen goods and whatever. I didn't want that to happen. So I sit outside in front of this place until the cops show up. Cops go in, they check the cameras, whatever they do, and I said, you didn't steal nothing. Well, no kidding. You wouldn't say. And I also wouldn't buy nothing after they told me I stole it after she told me. And why the other girl didn't say, no, he's been here the whole time, and no, those are his shoes? Why she didn't chime in, I still don't get that. Now,
And what's your point,
so
Jason?
here's my point, I get arrested. How now? I get arrested for a town ordinance. How do I go back and make an amends to the other ladies that work there? Well, first of all, I'm not allowed back at the store. How would you make it, so I'm not gonna make amends there. But how would you make amends to something where you was wrong, and then you went wronger? Now, you may not be wrong, and from what you may be accused for something, which I was, but I made it very wronger.
But your reaction, your behavior because of that incident caused an offense to others, or you feel badly that you offended them. And your question is, how do I make amends to them?
How would you make amends to something like that?
Well, change your behavior. Don't react that way, make a living amends. Okay? Treat somebody else, be there for somebody else when they're in a similar situation. All those are ways of making living amends.
So I wouldn't be making amends to the people that happened to, because of course I can't go back there, but
That happens all the time. So, but amends is not about them. The amends is about you. You changing your behavior.
okay.
It's kind of like paying it forward.
Yeah, that's good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So you won't do it again.
I think the judge is going to dismiss it, hopefully. The police did say that the judge would probably dismiss this. But, I think it's.
Well, he said you didn't steal anything. They watched it, they didn't steal anything. But that's how you do it. Anybody else have a comment on that?
I do.
Go ahead.
I used to have somebody that would tell me, don't come over here and try to show me how you've changed. Let me see you doing it somewhere else.
Amen.
Yes, yeah. And that's, and then what we do is, instead of making the world worse, hopefully we're making it better.
Amen.
And that's really what we need to strive to do. Yes, there's gonna be bad stuff that happens to all of us. And it's how we react, and if we do it wrongly, then we clean up our side of the street.
Do better next time.
Yeah, and that's part of the process.
So that doesn't mean going and throwing it in people's faces either. That's something I feared, is that if I was making amends with somebody and they're like, well, you're just throwing it in my face now.
Well, the idea is you're interested in trying to bring healing and to alleviate their suffering. And so when you're making amends, like Alicia said earlier about this lady, she didn't want to embarrass her. You shouldn't embarrass her. And if you did, then you wronged in doing your amends. You did it incorrectly.
Here's my
So,
question.
yes.
I've got myself to a question.
Got yourself to a question.
Is there like a checklist we can have, or somewhere that we can go over, that we can like mentally go through this checklist to know if we're gonna harm somebody or do it, you know? Cause like, does that make sense?
Yes, and, you know, what we did, you know, all those reflections you did last month, that's part of the process, okay? So, and what we're gonna be doing this month about actually carrying it out, and what I'm gonna talk about here in a little bit, those 5 steps, is a part of that. And so, but the absolute positive answer to your question is that, you know, working with your sponsor or a spiritual counselor or someone that is able to be a appropriate sounding board can help you process it with less emotion. At least they can have less emotion.
Well, that's what I was thinking was the transition from going from step 8 to step 9, like really sparked some imagination, you know, and it's like, hold up, I don't really wanna go here again, you know, cause now, like before I was thinking about it, now it's like, ooh, now I have to take action.
Well, you don't have to, but you get to, if you wanna grow up.
I feel that it's required.
Well, that's great, congratulations. And that's awesome,
Thanks.
that's awesome. That's really a big step. And, but I'm not saying it's required, but if you're gonna have spiritual growth, then you have to go through these processes.
It's not always comfortable.
I don't know that it's ever comfortable.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with change.
Yeah.
And we all want to change until we have to do something. We just like everybody else to change. That way it's easy for us.
Can we just stay on step 8 for the next year?
We can stay on step 8, but
I know.
It's fun to camp out sometimes for a while like that.
so, but it's processing. And Tommy, you're growing and you're developing, and your question indicates that. And so, congratulations. And
We made a list in step 4, and your list may have 20 things on it. And in reality, if you've got 20 things on your list, you've probably left off 1,800 that could have been on the list. So, but your list, you don't just look at it and go, I'm gonna go take care of these 20 things today and run house to house, and like, I'm sorry. You just start down the list and you work the list a little at a time, and some of those things you're not gonna be ready to go take care of.
You know what I noticed? I went back and looked at some of the stuff that's why I take note of it, so that I can go back and look at it. So if not, I gotta rely on Doug's memory, you know? And, no. But I go back and was looking at some of that stuff and I was like, you know what? That's not even important to me right now or anymore.
Yeah.
You know? Or was that really even important?
Something you gotta be careful about when you're looking at the things that I might do or might go that would hurt somebody, so I shouldn't do that. I always use the extreme example of, you probably shouldn't go to somebody and go, hey, I slept with your wife and 2 of your kids are mine.
And here's a gun.
Well, you know that's gonna hurt them, it's gonna hurt the wife, it's gonna hurt the kids, it's gonna do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And so you talk to your sponsor, your spiritual counselor or somebody, and they're probably gonna advise you that when you just have to live better in the future.
So
and
that's
not,
like this situation. You
you
don't
can't
do
fix
that
that
again.
one, so just change your behavior in the future. But then on the other hand, you can't go, well, I'm not gonna go to anybody because it might hurt somebody's feelings and give yourself an out. You do need to do some of the work, but use some common sense and think through the possible repercussions if you went up and tell somebody.
Yeah, because the problem I was having the last week, because I've been working this step even though I'm not doing it, and my problem this whole last week is that my list of people I felt needed to make amends with me was longer than the one that I wanted to make amends with.
That other list, you take it and you wad it up and you throw it away.
I burned it.
good,
Good job.
That's all, Tommy, you're on top of
congratulations.
it.
Yeah.
That's a big growth step.
That's
But I was
big.
like,
That's big.
cause I'm like, I've made amends with certain things that have, kind of smoothed themselves out, and I'm like, now we're at right here, and I'm like, oh, where? What? I can't think of nobody.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
But then I talked to John, we came up with a few people.
Well, given an opportunity and being willing is the key word, being willing, the Holy Spirit will bring certain things across your mind when you're ready.
Well, I
to do
know
it.
the more that I stop paying attention to, oh, I'm gonna put them on that list, because, they said I did all this bad to them, but really I did nothing but good to them. Wait a second. I'm not ready to make amends to the people over here if I'm holding grudges on them,
If you're not ready.
I'm not
just
willing to
not ready,
forgive them. Because I'm waiting, oh, well, they owe me something. No, they don't owe me nothing.
Well, you're in the process. Congratulations. That's where we're at. And that's the transformation inside here. It's more than sobriety. It's about recovery, transformation. And this is the heart work. This is the internal work. Step 8 and step 9 and step 10. Step 11 is my favorite. And so, you remind me of one of the lines in our guide here, step guide. It says in step 9, we put into practice the principles of the first 8 steps. We're in step 9, so it's talking about that. And it says powerlessness, I put down as number 1. Restoration, I put down step 2. Restoration of sanity, step 2. Surrender, number 3. Inventory of wrong, step 4, step 5, and step 8. Okay, because like Paul was talking about lists. Okay, that's having to do with some of those lists and inventories. Willingness is the next word. Willingness is step 6 and step 8. Okay, in fact, almost all the steps have to do with some form of willingness. And then and seeking help, 5 and 7. And so these are things that we've learned as we've gone through the steps, and we spent a whole month on, right? All these past steps, those that have been here. And so so that we've gone through that, and all of this, that was the end of that sentence, but the next sentence is, a short one, says, and all of this is adding up to amends. That's what the book says. Doing all those things, that's adding up to amends. That means your amends is you're changing, you're growing spiritually. That's what we want, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yep.
Thank you for the clarity.
Well, that's all right. No, thank you for the question. So I just wanted to touch on. Did I get finished with talking about that? Sometimes we may try to make an amends, and somebody, what we fear that they might reject us. Well, if that's it, that's some of the price that we need to pay and grow up and take it. You take it. And that's hard, but that's for more mature people. If you're not ready for that, then you may not be, you need to do some more processing before you go to deal with those type of amends. All right? We'll talk more about that here in a minute, about the 5 lessons, okay? I want to read scripture. I'll just get started here before I run out of time. And this is out of Matthew 5, and it says, so if you are preparing a sacrifice, or you're presenting a sacrifice at the altar, at the temple, and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, okay, we're talking about amends here, said leave your sacrifice there at the altar, okay, leave it there. Whatever gift or sacrifice you're going to do, leave there, and go and be reconciled to that person. Then come back and offer your sacrifice. I thought that scripture came to my mind pertaining to this lesson here. And this lesson is, how to apologize to someone you've hurt and actually move forward. I thought this was pretty good. So, all right. Number one, take responsibility. We talk about this all the time. And this blame shifting that we were talking about a while ago, that's a definite sign that you're not taking responsibility. You're not willing to grow up. You're not taking care of your side of the street. It's really, we are kind of raised to deny and to lie, okay? Right? And so we shift blame, deflect, we do all those type of things. But in step 9 here, we've really come to the point that we have identified, okay, this kind of goes to a little bit of what you were asking there a while ago. We finally come to the place that we've identified that we did something to someone that we need to offer an amends or make an amends, okay? That's a big step. I recognize I've done something wrong. I need to deal with it, all right? He goes on to say, in some way, you've already taken responsibility. What does that mean? Well, if you've recognized you need to make an amends, then you've started down that road of taking responsibility. Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay? Congratulations to the rest of you and for you out there. And by admitting that you caused another person harm. Okay? Now, sometimes when we're trying to justify or rationalize what we've done, sometimes we say, well, it's not real harm, it's just maybe emotional harm, maybe it's not physical harm, it's not harm if it's not physical, I didn't mean it, so really shouldn't have hurt them, they're just oversensitive, or blah, 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 right?
Reasoning.
Right. Yeah, reasoning, rationalizing, and the fact of it is, if they've been harmed, okay, or you think they've been harmed, then that's the reason why they came to your mind, and that you need to make an amends. And later on in these 5 lessons, it's going to talk about why it's so important for us to do that. Would that be a good question to answer, Tommy?
Yes.
Okay. All right. But it's also can help if in this amends process of naming the action that you took that caused the harm. Now that's getting right down to it. All right? I did this. If you just say, well, if I did anything wrong, I apologize. See, that's not really an apology, right? Even though that's the way we do it, right? And so if we say, and what that does, that say, I know what I did, and I'm willing to call it out, and I'm willing to change it, and I'm willing to even tell you that I know, and so that in doing that, I want to say, I'm sorry, forgive me, I want to be different than I was. I don't like being that way. That's my normal statement. I don't like being that way. I don't want to do that. And this is part of what helped me to make that change. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, number 2. Decide, this is number 2, decide on the content and the condition. Okay? The how, the what, the why, the when. Okay? We're deciding, we're making a decision, we're making a plan. See, if you don't create a plan, okay, then it's hard to follow that plan. So if you're going to go on a trip, nowadays we just turn on GPS and it helps us, but at least you gotta turn on the GPS, right? And so you gotta create a map, approach, what you're gonna be doing. So you need to, the content and the conditions, all right? That you're doing that for you so that you can be successful at it. Does that make sense? Next, you need to decide how you're going to make this amends and what you're going to say, right? Because sometimes when you get nervous, sometimes your mind goes blank, and if you don't have a mental road path, then you end up sometimes saying things that you just didn't really mean to say, right? Hello?
Yep.
I know it's not happened to any of you guys, but you know somebody it's happened to.
Yep.
All right, so the conditions for making amends can come in many different forms. What does that mean? That means, well, this is how do you make the amends? Such as writing a letter, okay? You can write a letter. You can call on the phone. You can send an email, okay? These are possible ways. Or you can set up a face-to-face meeting, right?
Yep.
Face-to-face meeting. Now, those are some of the hows, all right? And when has to do with making your decision to consider the easiest. Now, this kind of goes to what we were talking about a while ago, and I really like this way they said this. And by the way, this is from the mindbodygreen.com off the internet. And it says, to be the easiest for the person receiving the amends, okay? You're considering them, okay? Because we've lived a life that we didn't consider anybody but ourselves, right?
Yep.
And now we're trying to grow up. And we're trying to learn how to have that servant's heart that we were talking about, okay? And that servant's heart is one that we do things for other people at our expense to benefit them. That's a servant's heart, right? Hello? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some of that servant's heart in us through this process. And the amends process is a system to help us transform, okay? All right, so we want to consider the easiest way that for them that won't be hurtful for them. Okay, here's a do not. Okay, do not post your apology on Facebook. Okay, don't tell them on Facebook. I blah 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 blah, and so everybody can see what happened, what went on, and so forth and so on. Yeah, you may have the best intentions in the world, but the fact of it is that, again, can potentially and probably will harm the person you're trying to make amends with, right? And how's that going to work out for you? It's not going to be good. And you may feel better about getting it off your chest, but you just dumped a load of crap on them, right? So you had the problem before, and then you did it again. Boy, you've grown up, haven't you? Okay, so don't post it on Facebook for the family and friends to see. Regarding the content of the amends, keep your statements. This is the how to do it, okay? I just want to make sure you caught this. Regarding your direction, how you're going to direct it, your focus, how you're going to be focused. Because see, we have to get focused. Sometimes people like to try to do something, but they want to circle the airport a number of times before they decide to land. Right, Jason? And so here we are. And that's sometimes it's because we haven't taken the time to process how to communicate what we want to do. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So think about it. Think about it. Focus on it. And so that you don't do it wrong, okay? And so use I statements. A lot of times when we're dealing with somebody, we use you statements, but this is about you, it's not about them. You did this to me, and that's the reason why I did this. That's not an amends, that's not an apology, okay?
Sounds better though.
Oh,
Sounds like
I
it's gonna
think
be
this
better.
one-
yeah, to our twisted mind it does, you know, and so, I said I was blunt, right? So we use I statements, we deal with ourselves because that's where we're at. We're trying to grow up and mature, and so we stick with I statements, and we start the sentence with the action that we want to take, okay? What I want to do. Then you can talk about your feelings, how I feel. I feel badly about what I've done, okay? How I feel. And then the third is responsibilities. I take responsibility for my actions, and I'm sorry. Not if I offended you, I'm sorry. Not if you got mad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Period. Right?
Yep.
It's not about the other person. This is about you making transformation. Is this too hard? Am I too blunt? Am I too blunt, Jason?
You're doing good.
Okay, all right, thank you. So even if you do if you speak directly to somebody, like on the phone or face to face, you still need to write down what you're going to say, organize it. Because see, you have all these random thoughts until you place a demand on those thoughts and get them down on paper, it's not really organized. That helps. I know it helps. I've used that. I've used this method. And then we're still in number 2. And so this is the largest one. But you need to practice what you're going to say. You need to write it down. And here's a really good one. Keep it short. Okay? All right, keep it short. When I talk to people, oftentimes I say when you're trying to deal with a problem, you make, like a surgeon, you make fine cuts. You don't make deep ones all at once. All right? You do it little, fine cuts. You make it short. Okay? You're direct, you're focused, and it's about your actions, okay? And not the other person's actions. So again, think about the other person. Think about the other person. And not just yourself. Do
Yes.
no harm, right? Zach uses that term a lot, and I think it's really good, so I kind of stole that from him. I hope that's okay. I know he got it from the medical system probably anyway. But anyway, when I wrote that down there, I was thinking about Zach. So we're just going to, we'll stop on that one. And, I got the last line here. Again, be respectful of the other person's feelings and needs. That's what it's all about, okay? Number 3, create intentions without expectations, okay? And the creating intentions without expectations means that we make amends without expecting. You're sitting on the edge of your seat over there. In return. Anything in return. We're not expecting, we're making amends without expecting anything in return. Okay? That means whether they accept it or whether they reject it, we're carrying our own water. Okay?
So, I guess I waited till the right point to say this. So that's, you might get the response, oh honey, you're fine. And then they just totally move on. They might. Or they may not even know. They may, their response is not really critical to you. So you don't
You don't set yourself up with expectations of how they're going to respond. Because that may open up the door to have reconciliation and have a relationship reestablished, and it may not.
Because you never know, they may have been waiting for you just to come to your senses.
They may, that's correct. That's correct.
Or they may have moved on and forgot about it.
And that's true too. But we don't know. But we should not walk into it with expectations, is the point
That's what I was
here.
going to say, expectations are ridiculous, some of the expectations another human being has on another human being.
Yes.
We've had on them, I mean, I laugh so hard at myself or other people. I'm a waitress and I'm like, I just have to walk away and process some of the things people say to me. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And because people are people and they are the way they are, and that's reality.
Yeah, and I've grown so much that I'm so not offended. I'm so not uptight about it. I don't bark back. And it seems actually it's huge growth for me to be able to do that.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's awesome. Paul, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, we've made a couple of comments tonight about it's not about just cleaning up our side of the street, but it is about cleaning up our side of the street. Their reaction doesn't matter. We should walk away clean from the situation, but we still have to do that without the attitude of, well, to heck with you if you don't. Because if you're expecting a loving response and you get a negative response and you walk away with a, well, to heck with you, you haven't cleaned anything up and you
Right.
haven't humbly
Absolutely.
approached it. So it's not.
Because we're cleaning up our mess, and just because they're not willing to forgive us doesn't mean, we started this, you
But
know.
we can humbly say, I tried, I appreciate your listening to me and walk away, not start the fire again just because they didn't receive it like we wanted them to. It is about cleaning up our side of the street, but it's about them as well.
Yeah, I had a guy one time, I won't go into the whole story, but basically, I didn't do what he wanted to do, and he said I was mad at him. I said, no, I'm not mad at him. He said, oh, well, yes, you are. You've got a demon. And so, sometimes people react that way, okay? And so, and maybe I do, but,
What I heard.
Yeah, so that's what you heard? I've heard that too. I've heard that from several people, and most of them's been preachers for some reason. Well, okay. That was probably a low blow, but it was the truth. Let's see. We're on number 3. Just because you apologize and you're offering to relieve that other person's suffering, if possible, in some way, some small way, that doesn't mean they're going to listen to you. They may not even listen to you, Tommy. They don't have to care, okay? They don't have to accept your apology, all right? And it may not repair the relationship, which I've already mentioned about. It says making amends is not a guarantee. This information says making amends is not a guarantee.
All that is important is that you make amends for yourself, not others.
You're grown, okay? And so that you're changing and improving yourself, and yet it's such a struggle for us to do some of this, and it's hard, but really it's in your best interest. Even though it's a struggle, do it anyway. Because it heals you. And the harder it is, that's a true indication of something. I wonder what it's the indication of. That it's hard? Well, that you got to grow, need to grow. And so, why? Okay, let's go into the why here. Why are we making amends? Because making amends is relieving yourself of a burden.
Yep.
Okay? A burden of knowing that you caused someone harm
Yeah.
and hurt to do, that you failed to do anything about it, okay? You may have not actually, you may have not even did the harm, but you didn't do anything about the harm that was being done. You follow me?
Yep.
And you stood there while the person suffered in some way, okay? I don't know everybody's story everywhere, but, you know, sometimes we humans do bad stuff like that, right? And so we're standing there seeing the thing that's going on. That is a problem that we may need to clear up, if that's what we did. And for many people who do these type things or have done such, they or these type of actions, they feel, according to the research, they feel guilt and shame, anger, self-hatred, and depression. Because they know, consciously or unconsciously, they know that they've hurt and harmed others. And you're carrying that burden around. And until you start to deal with that, hey Deborah, until you start to deal with that, you know, let me use this terminology, you know, it's kind of like you're still carrying around poison in your own soul.
Yes.
Right? And you don't have to clean it up. You can walk around with this poison, but it might be good to get the antidote and start eliminating some of that.
Yep.
And the antidote in this lesson is making amends.
Yep.
Being willing to make the amends. Okay? How's that so far?
Awesome.
So, when you offer this amends, there is often a unburdening of those feelings. There's a lift there, okay? Now, sometimes, and as we discussed last week, sometimes you have an expectations that your feelings should be a certain way if you do a certain thing, but maybe the feelings won't be there. We can't control our feelings, okay? So don't expect that you're going to, you're going to have just because I've done it now, I should have a euphoric feeling, okay? And you may, or you may not, okay? But you're not in control of all those feelings. You're only in control of your choices and your behaviors, right? And yes, a lot of our thoughts create how we feel, but the fact of it is, we're not even sure of everything we're thinking about. So, you know, I'm just saying, don't have unreal expectations even on your own feelings. Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about feelings and emotions. You know, after I got through all the ugly things you were talking about, allowing God to heal my emotions, then being in charge of, what was the word I was looking for? Being able to not just process them, but now I have it. I'm in charge of my own emotions, you know, I lost the word for it.
Well, and we believe that we are in control of our emotions because we've we've lived a life that we've tapped a lot of it down, and the only one that we oftentimes used was anger, and we sure didn't.
Managing them. I manage my emotions.
Yeah.
These days, and now I'm able to, my heart is so sensitive and tender now,
Good.
it has those boulders removed, that I'm able to distinguish exactly what I'm feeling, and I can feel myself wrestling in my heart with a thought, because that's where your thoughts come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to know what I'm feeling now, and that's huge growth
That's awesome.
for me to know that I'm feeling that way, and that it's okay, and that
It's better than okay. That's important for us to be. We need to be aware of our thoughts and our feelings, so that we're able to, work on our thoughts and how you try to manage those emotions. But the fact of it is, we're talking about oftentimes when we do things like making amends, oftentimes we may have an expectation, and it may be an unreal expectation, that we should feel a particular way. It should feel this way. And that's a lot of heaviness that we put on ourselves. So this is an unburdening of your feelings. It is like a spiritual detox. I really like that terminology. It is a spiritual detox process. And we're detoxing us. Now, the thing of it is, when you're detoxed, when the detox stuff comes out, it's nasty and it's bitter, okay, right? And oftentimes it stinks, right? And so detoxing is not that pleasant, but it is extremely healthy.
Amen.
All right? And so we're detoxing that inner core there. And that means if we don't detox, then you're carrying that stuff around.
Yep.
That's your choice. You can do that if you want. And so as you relieve your personal suffering, making amends makes you feel better. Right?
Yep.
That's what we're talking about. That's why we do it, okay?
I like that.
Good, thank you. Number 4, make a commitment to yourself, okay? This is step 4 of how to let go, and it's going to talk about atonement. Atonement is reparations for wrongs and injuries, okay? Atonement is reparation for wrongs and injuries. Yes, sir?
What's the word reparation mean?
Reparation is like payment, repayment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so an atonement is a commitment you make in response to your harmful actions. You make an offer to another person to help relieve their suffering somehow. That's the purpose for reparations. You know, I'm sorry, if there's any way I can, make amends, I'm willing to do that. If you've stolen, you pay money back. If they're dead, it's hard to do anything for that person. Again, similar to the question that Jason asked earlier. So you may not be able to make amends to that person, but you can make amends for that person to everybody you meet. Okay, living amends,
Amend it forward.
paying it forward. Yeah.
I used to steal drugs from this person all the time, and they got clean. And I took them out to eat one day, somewhere nice. And he says, "Why are you taking me here?" And I said, "Well, I used to steal all your drugs, and now you're clean. I kind of just want to say I'm sorry." Like, very odd, that's odd. And I says, "Well, I feel bad about it, Is that kind of like,
And I will answer that with a question.
huh?
How did you feel afterwards?
Good. I felt like I righted my wrong.
All right.
It really wasn't important, to right. I didn't really have to, but
It was important.
If it was important, is important to you, and see, that's what we're talking about.
valued that person's friendship.
Because if we don't do these, and actually it's better to do them sooner than later, because it's always hanging over your head.
Yeah.
Unconsciously, and it's like the other shoe's gonna fall. I know it's gonna come up, because it does.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, because they're gone now, so I have a better memory.
And-
It's not like, oh, that's the person that was my friend, but I stole from them.
Yes, and so we make this amends with this atonement as a commitment you make in response to your harmful actions, okay? To relieve that suffering in some way. Or you promise to change something, okay, instead of, trying to pay or to do something but you promise to change something about yourself so that you won't commit that same hurt or harm to someone else in the future, or to that same person in the future, to avoid additional future suffering. And so I Oftentimes sometimes we have disagreements with people and we say, I'm sorry, I won't do that anymore. And oftentimes people get tired of hearing that because you keep doing it. But I remember having that discussion with my wife many years ago. Are you interested in this statement? Are you sure? Yeah. And so I told her I was sorry about something. She told me that I had said that before. And I said, yes, I know, and I'm sorry that I haven't been able to keep that promise, but it is my intent that I not do that anymore. So I not only did I say I was sorry for that, but I went on and in a matter of speaking, I kind of doubled down on that because it was not the way I wanted to be. That's just what I did, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And confronting that with her and letting her say that without me reacting to that was a way of trying to manage my own personal growth. Okay, does that make sense? I probably didn't need to tell that story, right?
Nobody else ever done that before.
You're gonna do anyway.
Well, so the one you've been waiting on, number 5, and we're right on time. Check in regularly. Okay, what does that mean? Is that finally you make these amends and you check in on yourself. What is there anything I need to clean up? You practice checking in on yourself and remembering the amends that you've made and see how you're doing in the amends that you've told to other people. Am I still on my growth path in that area? So you check in regularly on how you're doing on that daily spiritual practice. Recognize your mistakes that you made, and making the amends is an integral part of your spiritual growth. Right? So it's ideal with practice that you will begin to notice more quickly when you've harmed someone. So you become more sensitive to yourself that you have that you've hurt or harmed or offended someone, so that you can deal with it quicker. Does that make sense? You look perplexed, Willie. No?
Like, it gives you like a red flag for the next time.
Or for that time. I've crossed the line here, I need to fix this. The sooner
So
you...
you don't go this far in, like you see it then, but you may have gone too far then. But the next time, you can maybe not go as far.
Yeah, that's true, but that's part of the practicing aspect and reviewing. But doing that, it helps you to be more sensitive, and so that you can catch it closer to the offense, okay, later on, which is the idea. Because see, the way we grow is we do something and we go way on down the road, and then we realize, oh, I made a mistake, okay? And so what you have to, the way that I have visualized it in my own head and practice it, then what I have to do is I have to start catching that quicker, and it starts backing up. And hopefully that we get it closer to the event, okay, so that you actually are not able to do, you're less able to cause that hurt or offense. So you're able to stop it right there. And so that's kind of the target goal, in my opinion.
Yep.
Okay?
And it doesn't grow.
Excuse me?
If you stop it right there, it doesn't grow.
Yeah, right there. Nip it in the bud.
The reason step 9 is so important, at least I think so, is addiction starts for a reason. And
Correct.
it may be something that happened to you, whatever it is, and then you go into your addictive behavior, and then you do all this damage. And so you decide to get sober, and sober hurts because you've been treating pain all that time. So when you take away the pain treatment, not only do you have the original thing that caused the addiction, you have all this other garbage that you're going back to take care of. And so you work on what caused addiction in the first place, whatever it was that triggered the problem in the first place, but then you've got all this guilt that you built up over this time frame.
Yes,
And, you know,
well said.
stopping addictive behavior is not recovery. Working on the original problem and then working on this is recovery, because if you don't fix this, it'll be a pain and it will draw you back into your addiction, because that's how you've learned to make pain go away.
Or you create another addiction.
Or you create another addiction. So it's really important that you work on the original problem with a sponsor or whoever you need to, because sober is not recovered, and then work on the damage that you feel guilty for so that you don't have a reason to need to use again.
Right. Have to go into our unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Questions,
comments? Deborah?
Talking about checking in, does that direct it to sponsors too? Like you, in the paper, maybe that wasn't what you're saying, but you have to check in if you're an ex-drug addict, you know what I mean? Get a sponsor
Well,
and stuff.
what we were talking about as far as checking in, that was checking in on yourself,
Yeah.
checking in on your, how you're doing in your amends process, how well you're doing, thinking about what you've done, what you've done to try to correct that, and if you're still doing what you said that you wanted to do, you're checking in, following up on yourself. And that's the checking in we were talking about. But to have spiritual growth, to mature, that's for all, even sponsors, yes. Ministers,
Yeah.
and even potentates like yourself.
Right, I didn't go to no dry out place, I only got 5 sponsors. And most of them didn't know what a sponsor was. They looked at me and I said, I don't know what it is either. And 9 out of 10 of them almost called their name and asked them how they were doing. That's just kind of off the wall there, but you know, I know what you're talking about. But you see, a lot of people, they go to these places and they don't get no better. You know, I don't think they're trying.
Well, we can't control them, we just gonna need to take care of us.
Right?
Take care of our side of the street. So, any other comments or questions? All right.
I think whenever a person that's unhappy, you know, and they're trying to, you know, make you, not happy, and, like, when they realize that, you know, they have no power to do that, I think it makes a person respect you more. You know, people start respecting you whenever your behavior and your attitude changes. I mean, I've realized this in my growth. The amount of people that respect me now because I have changed, and the way that I act, you know, the way that things are lining up on the inside has a reflection on the outside too. And I know that there's still a lot more work until I die that God's got to do on me, but really, like, people, it's meaningless, it's absolutely ignorant to even, you know, I'm trying to say this without offending anybody or anybody taking it the wrong way, like, there's so many things that we think about that are just so harmful, and once we can lay all those thoughts down, it never really even mattered what people think, you know, about anything that we've been talking about tonight. Like, it's just so silly. Things just strike me that are so silly now, that meant so much to me, that were so chaotic, that took up so much time and energy and space in my skull,
Right.
that I allowed it to.
Yep.
And really, that, like you were saying, the person probably never even thought that or even cared, or, you know, but this is so important to get to that point where, of the letting go, that we don't even have to think about this crap anymore, that it has no power over us, and then it's stupid, it's rude.
Yep, we don't, something else that Zach says, you know, you don't have to jump into every tornado, you know.
Yeah, I like
You know,
that.
and I like that, and so we take on all this stuff, and so we need to, you know, I heard Dr. Carolyn Leaf, and I only heard it once, so I don't have it down exactly right, I need to go back and recheck it, but she made a statement that, you know, after my personal growth, I am way better about not falling into other people's manipulation.
Yeah.
And I like that. She put some other things around it, but that's basically what it means. And as we grow, we're less apt to be manipulated. And so,
I think there's actually a scripture, you know, to get in somebody else's business, so to speak, the scripture says, it's like seizing a dog by its ears.
right,
To meddle in somebody else's quarrel.
that's in
or
Proverbs,
to-
I think.
Yeah, I mean, Proverbs is amazing
Yeah.
for wisdom.
All right, I'm gonna shut her down because I'm way over, and may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you peace. And always, 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 always make healthy choices. Till next week, take care of yourself.
Can't you have a positive day?
To go sack. Oh, did you get your slip? Oh, I forget.
I'm not sure if I don't think I'm gonna be late.
Zach, we need a vote on this.